Most people think the CIA is about James Bond gadgets and heroic agents saving America from danger. They imagine sleek spies in tuxedos, high-tech surveillance rooms, and patriotic missions fought in the shadows for freedom and democracy. But if you look closely at history, you'll see something much darker. The CIA wasn't built to protect American values. It was built to protect American power. And the difference between those two things has cost millions of lives, toppled dozens of governments, and turned entire regions of the world into permanent war zones. The shocking part is that none of this was hidden. It was all done openly, legally, and with the full backing of every president since Harry Truman. Because the CIA doesn't work the way you think it does. It doesn't answer to the people. It answers to power itself. Meet David Chun. He's sitting in a coffee shop in Frankfurt, Germany, scrolling through his laptop. To anyone watching, he looks like a tech consultant, maybe working remotely for some Silicon Valley startup. His backpack carries the usual items: a MacBook, noise-canceling headphones, a Moleskine notebook. But David isn't a consultant. He's a CIA hacker, part of the agency's Center for Cyber Intelligence. And he's about to deploy malware into the phone of a mid-level Iranian diplomat staying 3 blocks away. David doesn't carry a gun. He doesn't need one. His weapon is code. And his mission, like thousands of others happening right now across the globe, will never make the news. This is how the CIA actually works. Not in the movies. In the shadows of everyday life, where power moves silently and the public never knows until it's far too late. To understand how the CIA operates today, you have to go back to the beginning, not to some noble founding myth, but to a moment of raw geopolitical panic. It is the year 1945. The Second World War has just ended. Europe lies in ruins. The Soviet Red Army occupies half the continent. And the United States government realizes it has a problem. Washington knows almost nothing about what Stalin is planning. America's wartime intelligence agency, the Office of Strategic Services, had parachuted agents behind Nazi lines and sabotaged supply chains. But compared to the Soviet KGB or Britain's MI6, the OSS was amateur hour. When President Harry Truman took office, he initially shut it down. But within months, he realized that America needed something bigger, something permanent. A peacetime spy agency with the power to operate anywhere in the world, answerable only to the president. In 1947, Congress passed the National Security Act, creating the Central Intelligence Agency. On paper, its mission was simple: gather intelligence and advise the president. But buried in the fine print was a clause that changed everything. The CIA was authorized to perform such other functions and duties related to intelligence as directed by the National Security Council. That vague wording gave the agency near unlimited power. It could spy, sabotage, bribe, blackmail, and if necessary, kill, all without asking Congress for permission. The CIA was born not as a defender of democracy, but as an instrument of executive power, designed to operate beyond the reach of oversight or accountability. And it needed money. Lots of it. The kind of money you can't ask for in a public budget. That's where the Marshall Plan comes in. After World War II, the United States poured over $13 billion into Europe to rebuild shattered economies and prevent the spread of communism. It was sold to the American public as humanitarian aid. But hidden inside the Marshall Plan was a secret arrangement. 5% of the funds, roughly $685 million, was quietly diverted to the CIA. That money funded covert operations across Europe, bribing politicians, rigging elections, funding anti-communist newspapers, and labor unions. The CIA didn't just gather intelligence. It shaped reality, buying influence in foreign countries the same way corporations buy shelf space in a grocery store. This wasn't an accident. It was the business model, and it set the template for everything that followed. But money alone doesn't win wars. The early CIA was riddled with failures. In the late 1940s, the agency trained Ukrainian agents and parachuted them into Soviet-held territory. Every single one was killed or captured. Why? because the mission's key handler was secretly a KGB informant, feeding Moscow every detail before planes even took off. The failures were so consistent that CIA Director Walter Bedell Smith feared the agency would be written off as a joke. He needed a headline victory, something bold, decisive, and impossible to ignore. And in 1953, he got his chance. Iran. Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh had just nationalized the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company, stripping Britain of its most lucrative asset in the Middle East. London was furious, but it couldn't act alone. So it turned to Washington, hoping the CIA would do what the British Empire no longer could: remove a democratically elected leader who refused to play ball. The CIA approved the plan. They called it Operation Ajax. At its center was Kermit Roosevelt Jr., grandson of President Theodore Roosevelt. He slipped into Tehran with over $1 million in cash. The plan was elegantly simple: bribe parliamentarians, pay newspaper editors to print stories branding Mossadegh a communist dictator, fund mobs to riot in the streets, and rally military officers loyal to the Shah to stage a coup. On August 19, 1953, tanks rolled through Tehran. Soldiers stormed the prime minister's residence. Mossadegh escaped over a garden wall, but was captured within hours. The Shah returned from exile. Western oil companies regained control of Iran's resources. In Langley, the coup was celebrated as a masterpiece: clean, swift, and decisive, a textbook covert operation. But what the CIA didn't see, or didn't care to see, was the long-term cost. The coup poisoned U.S.-Iran relations for generations. It planted the seeds of the 1979 Islamic Revolution, the hostage crisis, and decades of Middle Eastern instability. The CIA had won a battle, but it had lost the war before it even began. The 1950s turned into a blur of coups. In Guatemala in 1954, the CIA overthrew President Jacobo Arbenz using propaganda, mercenaries, and economic sabotage. Arbenz had dared to nationalize and use land owned by the United Fruit Company, an American corporation with deep ties to Washington. The company lobbied, the CIA acted, and Guatemala descended into decades of civil war and military dictatorship. The pattern was always the same. A leader threatens American corporate interests. Washington labels him a communist. The CIA moves him with cash, lies, and violence. Democracy is crushed, and the public back home is told it was done to protect freedom. But not every operation worked. In Cuba, early plots to destabilize Fidel Castro went nowhere. In Indonesia, an attempt to overthrow President Sukarno fizzled. In Eastern Europe, operations were rolled up by the KGB before they began. The CIA realized it couldn't beat the Soviets at traditional espionage. Moscow's networks were too deep, too disciplined. So the agency pivoted. If America couldn't win with spies on the ground, it would win with technology in the sky. Enter the U-2 spy plane. Designed by Lockheed Skunk Works under the direction of legendary engineer Kelly Johnson, the U-2 could fly at 70,000 feet, higher than any Soviet missile or fighter jet could reach. Its cameras could photograph objects 2 feet wide from 13 miles up. Every mission brought back rolls of film that redrew the maps in the Pentagon and the White House. The Soviets could see it on radar, but couldn't touch it. For years, the U-2 gave America a decisive edge. Until May 1st, 1960, when Soviet missiles finally brought one down over Sverdlovsk. Pilot Francis Gary Powers was captured. President Eisenhower was forced to admit the U.S. had been spying. The age of invincibility was over. But the CIA's love affair with technology had only just begun. David, our hacker in Frankfurt, finishes his coffee and checks his watch. The Iranian diplomat is scheduled to return to his hotel in 15 minutes. David opens a program on his laptop. It's called Fine Dining, a tool designed to deploy malware from close range. He walks 3 blocks, enters a hotel lobby, and sits in a chair near the elevator. When the diplomat passes, David's laptop silently connects to the man's phone via a Bluetooth exploit. Within seconds, the malware is installed. The diplomats' messages, emails, and phone calls will now be recorded and sent to a CIA server in Virginia. The whole operation takes less than 2 minutes. The target will never know. This is modern espionage. No car chases, no gunfights, just code, patience, and a coffee shop with good Wi-Fi. By the 1960s, the CIA was no longer just toppling governments. It was waging wars. In Vietnam, the agency ran the Phoenix program, a counterinsurgency operation that relied on intelligence networks, assassination squads, and psychological warfare. The goal was to neutralize Viet Cong infrastructure by identifying and eliminating suspected communist sympathizers. Over the course of the program, more than 20,000 people were killed. Many were innocent. The program was so brutal, so indiscriminate, that it became a permanent stain on America's reputation. But it didn't stop there. In Laos, the CIA backed Hmong militias to fight communist forces. To fund the operation, the agency looked the other way as those militias protected opium fields and trafficked heroin. The drug trade became a covert revenue stream. Profits from narcotics helped pay for weapons, training, and logistics that Congress never approved. The CIA wasn't just fighting communism. It was running a shadow economy built on drugs, guns, and blood. At home, the agency crossed another line. Under a program called MK-Ultra, the CIA experimented on unwitting American citizens with LSD, sensory deprivation, hypnosis, and psychological torture. The goal was mind control. The agency wanted to create assassins who could be programmed, who would carry out missions and then forget they had ever done so. The experiments were conducted in universities, hospitals, and prisons. Subjects were dosed without consent. Some suffered permanent psychological damage. Others died. When the program was exposed in the 1970s, the CIA destroyed most of the records. To this day, the full scope of MK-Ultra remains unknown. The 1970s brought a reckoning. The Vietnam War ended in disaster. The Watergate scandal exposed the rot at the heart of American government. And Congress finally turned its attention to the CIA. The Church Committee and Pike Committee investigations revealed decades of abuse, assassinations, coups, drug trafficking, domestic surveillance, mind control experiments. For the first time, the public saw the agency for what it really was. Not a noble defender of freedom, but a rogue operation accountable to no one. Reforms were promised. Oversight was supposedly strengthened, but the fundamental structure remained intact. The CIA still operated in secret. It still had access to black budgets, and it still answered only to the president. In the 1980s, the agency plunged into one of its most controversial operations yet, Iran-Contra. The setup was absurdly illegal. The CIA and key figures in the Reagan White House sold arms to Iran, a country officially designated as an enemy. The profits from those sales were funneled to Contra rebels in Nicaragua, who were fighting to overthrow the leftist Sandinista government. Congress had explicitly banned funding for the Contras. The CIA did it anyway. And once again, drug trafficking played a role. Cocaine from Central America moved north into the United States. CIA-linked operatives and contractors looked the other way, or in some cases, actively facilitated the trade. The drugs flooded American cities, fueling the crack epidemic of the 1980s. The profits flowed back south to fund the war. When the scandal broke in 1986, it should have destroyed the agency. Instead, a few officials were indicted. Most were later pardoned. And the CIA kept operating as if nothing had happened. Around the same time, the CIA found another useful tool. The Bank of Credit and Commerce International, or BCCI. Headquartered in Luxembourg and Pakistan, BCCI was a criminal enterprise disguised as a bank. It laundered money for drug cartels, dictators, and arms dealers. And it provided covert financial services for the CIA. Through BCCI's network of shell companies and offshore accounts, the agency moved money for operations in Afghanistan, Latin America, and the Middle East. Informants were paid. Black market arms deals were financed. Slush funds for allied intelligence agencies flowed through its books without a trace. When regulators finally shut down BCCI in 1991, investigators called it the largest criminal enterprise in history. But the CIA's role in propping it up was quietly buried. David is back in his hotel room in Frankfurt now. His mission is complete. The malware is active. Data is already flowing back to Langley. But David won't be here tomorrow. His next assignment is in Kuala Lumpur. After that, maybe Nairobi or Buenos Aires. The CIA's network spans a globe. Covert bases hidden inside embassies and consulates. Hacking units in Europe. Spy stations in Australia. Black sites in countries that officially deny their existence. The agency had become a self-contained empire, operating with near total autonomy. It doesn't need to ask Congress for permission. It doesn't need to tell the public what it's doing. It just acts. And by the time anyone finds out, the damage is already done. So how does the CIA actually work? It works by operating the gap between what the public is told and what actually happens. It works by laundering power through black budgets, shell companies, and offshore accounts. It works by toppling governments, trafficking drugs, and torturing prisoners, all in the name of national security. It works because every president since Truman has decided that the ends justify the means. That American power is more important than American values. That democracy at home requires dictatorship abroad. The CIA is not an aberration. It is not a rogue agency. It is exactly what it was designed to be, a tool of empire, unaccountable, invisible, and unstoppable. David closes his laptop and packs his bag. Tomorrow, he'll be in another city, running another operation, and the cycle will continue. Because the CIA doesn't just work in the shadows. It is the shadow, the dark side of American power that the public is never meant to see. Until one day, when the consequences come home. And by then, it's always too late. History doesn't repeat, but if you don't understand it, it will crush you all the same. The CIA's operations aren't just stories from the past. They are blueprints for the present. Every coup, every black budget, every secret prison is a reminder that power, when unchecked, doesn't protect freedom. It devours it. If this gave you a new perspective, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.